Uncle Antonio died, I was the only one who showed up at the funeral. It was raining in sheets, typical of October in Batangas, but the wind that clung to the old church in San Miguel that morning felt unnaturally cold, as if it had crept down from somewhere darker than the heavens. I didn't know him well. My mother barely spoke of him, except to mutter prayers under her breath every time someone mentioned his name. But he had left me a house and a letter. I found the letter tucked inside a creaking drawer at the lawyer's office, yellowed and scrawled in a frantic hand. To whomever receives this, do not stay overnight. The house remembers. The house hungers. Let it rot. Burn it if you can. I failed. You might not. I thought it was a joke, a madman's ramblings. But the house was real, and the land title was legally mine. A sprawling 2-story colonial mansion, nestled at the edge of a coconut plantation, surrounded by moss-choked trees and a silence that didn't seem right. I arrived late in the afternoon, just as the sun started to bleed into the horizon. The tricycle driver who brought me there refused to drive all the way up the long gravel path. "Just up to here, sir," he said, without meeting my eyes. "I'm not going any further up there, not even if you triple the pay." I carried my duffel bag and walked the remaining distance. The house rose from the jungle like a skeleton from the earth, gray, imposing, and cracked with time. Vines strangled its wooden railings. The paint had peeled into flakes that dusted the porch like fallen petals. Yet there was something else, something deeper than neglect, like the place was holding its breath. When I unlocked the door, it groaned open like a wounded animal. Inside, the air was thick, the kind that clings to your skin and burrows into your lungs. Dust floated in beams of fading sunlight, and every board beneath my feet seemed to creak with protest. The house felt like it was watching me. I should have left then. But curiosity is a louder voice than fear when it whispers in the ears of the naive. The ground floor had a living room with antique furniture, all covered in white sheets. A grand piano sat in the corner, its keys yellowed and cracked, and I swear it emitted a faint hum as I walked past. The dining room had a massive table with 10 chairs, each carved with snarling beasts instead of angels. I pulled one chair back. It scraped the floor louder than it should have, and a shiver climbed my spine. I explored the kitchen. Old stove, dusty sink, jars that hadn't been opened in decades. Flies buzzed near the window. I checked the pantry and found something bizarre. The shelves were full of candles, hundreds of them. Tall ones, fat ones, all unused. Some had strange symbols etched into the wax. I chalked it up to old superstition. Upstairs were 5 bedrooms. I chose the one at the far end of the hall, the only one that had a window facing the driveway. I needed that line of sight, like a thread to the outside world. The others had nailed shutters or were boarded up from the inside. As night fell, the house came alive. First, the sounds began. Faint footsteps above me, then dripping like water from a pipe, but there was no leak, no pipes overhead. Then low whispers, unintelligible, as if someone were speaking through the walls. When I leaned closer, it stopped. At 3 a.m., the bedroom door creaked open. I had locked it. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, the sweat on my skin suddenly ice cold. There was nothing there, just darkness stretching into the hallway. I stepped outside. The hallway had changed. Where earlier there had been a painting of a woman in a red borrowed saya hanging on the wall. There was now a mirror. My reflection was warped. Behind me, a shadow moved, but when I turned, nothing was there. I returned to my room. The door was gone. I stood there, in a hallway that shouldn't have changed, staring at the blank wall where my bedroom door used to be. There was no door, no sign it had ever existed. I backed away, heart jackhammering in my chest. Number, no. I touched the wall, solid, cold, real, but I had just left the room. It had been there. From behind me, the mirror whispered again. I spun around. The glass was no longer warped. Now it was crystal clear. Except there was someone behind me in the reflection. A woman. She stood inches away from my back, face just out of view, her head tilted unnaturally, like her neck had been twisted far too far. Her hair hung in clumps, wet and matted, the strands almost brushing my shoulder in the reflection. I whipped around. No one. Just empty hallway. But in the mirror, she hadn't moved. She was still there, still standing behind me. Only now, she was smiling. I don't remember screaming, but my throat burned as I ran. Stumbled, really, down the hallway, past the other rooms. I reached the staircase and tore down it 2 steps at a time, nearly falling face first into the dusty floor of the foyer. I turned to bolt for the door, only to find it chained from the inside, and not with the original latch. No, this was something else. Thick, rusted chains that hadn't been there before, crisscrossing the handles like an ancient padlock shrine. I didn't do this. A sound echoed from upstairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Someone, or something, was coming down. I ran for the kitchen, slammed the door behind me, fumbled for anything at all. I found a small oil lamp, somehow still full. When I lit it, the flame flared blue for a second before settling into a sickly yellow glow. The walls of the kitchen seemed to breathe. The wallpaper pulsed like it was alive. I backed into the corner and tried to focus, tried to ground myself. A photo on the wall caught my eye, faded, sepia-toned. It showed a family, a man, woman, and a young girl. They stood in front of this very house, smiling, except the woman's face was scratched out. Not faded, scratched out violently, repeatedly. Then the lamp flickered, and I saw it. A figure moved across the far end of the kitchen, half shrouded in shadow. It was tall, inhumanly tall, its limbs too long for its body. It had no face, only a blank expanse of skin where its features should have been. Yet I knew it was looking at me. I froze, not even breathing. It took 1 step closer. The floor groaned, and then it vanished, just like that. But not before I saw the reflection of that same faceless shadow in the glass of the cabinet beside me. And behind it, in that reflection, the woman was there again. Closer this time, whispering something. I pressed my hands to my ears. It didn't help. I found the hidden basement the next morning. I had collapsed from exhaustion in the pantry, and when I woke, sunlight creeping through the grimy window, I saw the edge of a trapdoor beneath the old woven rug. My pulse quickened. I didn't want to go down there. I had to. The air grew colder with every step down the rotting stairs. The basement smelled of mold and something far worse. Something like iron and rotting meat. In the far corner, I found an old chest, locked with a rusted padlock. I smashed it with a metal pipe from the tool shelf. Inside, I found bones. Small bones. Child-sized. I vomited. I couldn't help it. Beneath the bones, I found a diary, wrapped in linen, soaked through with something brown and stiff. I opened it with shaking hands. It belonged to my uncle. October 19th, 1987. The girl appears only at night. I thought it was guilt, but now I know better. She lives in the mirrors. She mimics. She remembers. October 22nd. Maria tried to leave. The house wouldn't let her. I saw her reflection smile before she screamed. She's gone now, just like the others. October 28th. I've chained the doors. I've burned the portraits. Still, it watches me. November 1st. They said it was cursed land, that the house grew from blood, that my grandfather made deals with the witches of Mount Banahaw. Now, they come to collect. The faceless one, the drowned girl, the mirror witch. They whisper at night. They want me to stay. I dropped the diary and ran. This time, the front door was wide open, and outside, the world was gone. The sky outside wasn't the pale morning blue I'd expected. It was red, not sunrise red, blood red. Thick clouds churned above like smoke, rising from an invisible fire. The driveway, the one I had walked the day before, was gone. In its place stretched an unending field of black soil. No trees, no birds, no sound. I stepped out slowly, cautiously. The air thick and metallic, like I was breathing in rust. Behind me, the house creaked, its windows watching me like eyes behind curtains. I took 5 steps before I heard it. A bell, then another. Ding, 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 like a funeral toll echoing across a world with no life left in it. I turned back. The house was closer. I had moved away from it, but it was closer. I blinked. It was right behind me. I stumbled back onto the porch, heart hammering. The door opened on its own, slow and deliberate. There was no choice now. The house had unmade the world around it. It was all that existed, a pocket of something that obeyed only its rules. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me. The hallway was different, longer, far longer than it should have been. The mirrors had multiplied, lining both sides like a gauntlet. I kept my eyes low, refused to look directly at them, but they reflected me anyway. Even when I didn't move, my reflection did. Then one of them stepped out, not from the mirror, from behind me, from inside my own reflection. A perfect copy of myself, but its eyes were pitch black, its smile wrong, a full-toothed thing that stretched far too wide. It stepped into the hall and pointed at me. "You don't belong here," it said, voice hollow like 100 whispers stacked on top of each other. "You're just meat." I ran. Down the hallway that kept stretching, kept turning, room after room that bled into each other. Bedrooms turned into kitchens, kitchens into stairwells, stairwells into dead ends. I opened a door and found a room full of beds, all occupied. Bodies, mummified, but fresh. Faces twisted in expressions of pure terror. Some were missing eyes. Some had mouths sewn shut. Each of them had a mirror hanging at the foot of their bed. Then one of them moved. Its eyes shot open, and it screamed. The house's secrets were carved into the walls, symbols hidden behind layers of peeling paint, glyphs etched into floorboards, only visible in the corner of your eye. I followed them, let them guide me. Somewhere deep inside, past a rotting ballroom with a chandelier full of bones, I found a room filled with candles, hundreds of them, all lit. At the center, an altar, and above it, a portrait. My great-grandfather, the real one. The diary hadn't lied. He had made a deal. Not with the devil, not even with a witch, with something older, something inside the land itself. And when he built the house, it became a gateway, a feeding ground. The family was supposed to keep it fed, keep people coming in, a cycle. And when Uncle Antonio stopped playing by the rules, the house punished him. I turned to leave and saw them, all of them. The girl with her drowned eyes, the woman from the mirror, the faceless shadow, my reflection, grinning wide. "You have the blood," they said in unison. "You owe us." I shook my head. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. But you inherited it," my reflection whispered. "You're one of us now." I don't remember how I escaped the ritual room, only that I woke up in the foyer, drenched in sweat, holding a single candle from the altar. I knew what I had to do. Fire, salt, destruction. I ransacked the house for anything flammable. Curtains, old furniture, alcohol from the cellar. I coated the floors. I carved sigils into the walls, following the diary's last pages. And when everything was ready, I stood in the center of the foyer, surrounded by flickering flame. They came, all of them. The woman, the girl, the shadow, my reflection. They screamed, shrieked, begged. The walls bled black ichor. The mirrors shattered one by one, howling with each crack. The floor moved beneath me, like the house itself was trying to drag me down. But I lit the match, and I burned it all. I woke up in a hospital in Tanawan. They said I had been found a few kilometers from San Miguel, walking barefoot along the highway. Burn marks all over my arms. No ID, no phone, just clutching a melted wax candle and a broken piece of glass. The house, gone. No record of it. No land title. The lawyer doesn't exist. The road leads to a coconut plantation, but no structures, not even ruins. But I remember. The whispers still haunt my sleep.
Sometimes I see my reflection smile when I'm not. And on rainy nights, I hear a piano playing from somewhere far away. When I saw the listing for a Spanish-era house on Ballet Drive, cheap, untitled, and available for immediate move-in, I didn't even hesitate. I should have. I was a freelance editor, living paycheck to paycheck, desperate for any place better than the shoebox apartment I'd been crammed into for 2 years. The owner, a soft-spoken woman in her 60s named Señora Carmela, told me I could pay half the rate for the first 3 months. She didn't explain why. Just smiled and said, it needs someone young in it again, someone alive. The house sat at the farthest, darkest bend of Ballet Drive, behind a black iron gate choked with vines. A gnarled ballet tree hung over the roof, like it was waiting to drop into the house and swallow it whole. It looked too old, too dark, too still, but I moved in anyway. On my first night, the lights flickered, then held steady. The house groaned when I stepped into it, like it was exhaling after being alone too long. That first night, I dreamed of water, of drowning, and when I woke up, my sheets were wet. It started small, a knock on the front door at 3:11 a.m. Every night, 3 knocks, software, deliberate. I tried ignoring it, thinking maybe it was some prankster or a neighbor. But there were no neighbors, not within shouting distance. The house next door was in ruins, and the next one after that had been abandoned since the 90s, overtaken by vines and fog. Then came the woman. The first time I saw her, I thought she was real. Just someone lost. She stood at the end of the driveway, pale as paper, wearing a long white dress stained at the hem.
Her hair was wet. She looked up at the window and smiled. I blinked. She was gone. That night, I bolted the doors, shut the windows, salted every threshold. I even called a local albulario the next morning. He took one look at the house and refused to go past the gate. "This is a belite tree, son," he whispered. "Someone went in there before you were even born. That's not a house anymore. It now belongs to another world." It was the third week when I discovered the room that should not exist. So I was organizing old boxes in the second-floor hallway closet when I leaned too hard on the back panel and fell through it. The plywood splintered, and I landed in what should have been nothing. But it was a room, a hidden bedroom, windowless, with walls covered in scratch marks, some long, deep gouges, others tiny, desperate lines like fingernails. The bed was still made. The sheets were crusted with something brown. A wooden crucifix lay shattered on the floor. On the wall above the bed, written in charcoal or maybe blood, were the words, "Behind the mirrors." That night, every mirror in the house turned black, and every time I walked past one, I saw a face behind mine. Not the woman. My face, only twisted, laughing, watching. The bale of the tree outside grew louder. Yes, louder. It creaked at night, not with the wind, but with weight, like something was hanging from it, swinging. I avoided looking at it, but one night, drawn by a sound like rope tightening, I peeked through the blinds. There were 3 figures hanging from the branches. Not corpses. Not really. They moved like puppets, and one of them turned its head toward me and whispered my name. The next morning, the grass beneath the tree was flattened, as if something heavy had been dropped again and again and again. I tried leaving. My car wouldn't start. I called a grab. No one came. I walked for an hour in one direction and somehow ended up right back at the gate. Time wasn't right anymore. Neither was space. I started filming everything. Out of desperation, mostly. I needed proof. Something to convince myself I wasn't slipping. I set up my old DSLR on a tripod in the hallway, pointed at the long mirror beside the stairs, hit record, left it running overnight. In the morning, the camera was still there, but the footage was corrupted. It started normal, empty hallway. Nothing moved for the first hour. Then, at 3 a.m., the mirror flickered. For one frame, just one, a woman appeared, face against the glass, mouth wide in a silent scream. Her eyes were pure white, skin bloated like a drowned body. She stared directly into the lens. Then she vanished. A second later, the reflection of me walked past. But I hadn't left my room all night. The farthest room in the house, a locked storage room I'd ignored for weeks, was open one morning. Inside, it smelled of mildew and old breath. You know that cold, wet kind of air? Like something had been breathing in there for decades. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings. Mysterious hanging on Belette Drive. Local girl found drowned in second-floor tub. Tenants complain of hallucinations. Go missing. The oldest one was from 1949. At the center of the room was a single object, a hand mirror, covered in black cloth, tied shut with old twine. I don't know why I unwrapped it. I wish I hadn't. When I looked into the mirror, I didn't see my face. I saw the house from outside, but I was in the window, and I was smiling. Then my reflection lifted its hand and knocked on the glass 3 times. The floorboards beneath the house groaned more every night. I started hearing movement under my bed. Not rats, not creaks, breathing. One night, I followed the sound. It led me to the kitchen, to a trap door I hadn't noticed before, tucked under the refrigerator. I pried it open. Stairs, narrow stone, leading straight down into the earth. The space below was a ritual chamber. Dust choked the air. Symbols were carved into every wall. At the center was a shallow pit, and inside, the bones of at least a dozen people. Twisted, some small, one still wearing a crucifix, and behind the pit, painted in rust or blood, Lagi Kang Pinapanud. You're always being watched. As I turned to run, I heard something scrape behind me. I didn't look. I never looked back down there again. I started boarding up the mirrors, every one of them. I couldn't take it anymore. But the mirror in the second floor hall always came back. No matter how I covered it, smashed it, moved it, by morning, it was there again. And then it changed. One night, I walked past it and saw Mij again. But this time, my reflection reached out. Its hand pressed against the glass, and mine didn't move. It stared at me. Then it mouthed 3 words. Let me. In, and then it started pounding. Harder, harder. The mirror cracked. Then, spiderwebbed completely, but never broke. I finally tracked down a former caretaker. Old man, maybe in his 80s, half blind. He met me at a sari store 2 blocks away from the house. Wouldn't go near it. I warned them, he said, voice shaking. That house was never meant to be built there. The ballet, it's a portal. A nest. He told me about the White Lady. Not just one, many. Victims, spirits, some real, some illusions, all stuck. Once the house sees you, he whispered, it learns you, it copies you, and eventually, you stop being you. Then he gave me a warning I'll never forget. If you see yourself inside a mirror, and it's smiling when you're not, don't blink, don't move. And whatever you do, don't answer it when it knocks. I woke up on the floor. Not my floor. Stone. Cold. Damp. I stood slowly, heart pounding, and realized I was in the hidden ritual chamber again. Only this time, the pit was gone. The walls were breathing, literally inhaling and exhaling, like the house had lungs. Something laughed. Not out loud. Inside my head. I ran back up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, expecting to see my kitchen. But instead, I stepped out into my own bedroom. Only, I was already there, lying in bed, sleeping. I froze. Number not sleeping. Dead. The body in my bed was me. Mouth open in a silent scream, eyes glassy. My skin was gray. My arms were twisted, like someone had tried to pull them off. The mirror across from the bed cracked once, twice, then shattered outward. And the thing that crawled out was wearing my skin. It stood slowly. Same height, same voice, same scar under the left eyebrow. But the grin never left its face. You've been such a good tenant, it said, but it's time for the house to wear you. I ran. It followed. Every room I entered, it was there. Every reflection showed it gaining ground. Every corner turned into another hallway. The house folded and stretched like a living thing, like it wanted me to get lost in its guts forever. I broke a chair leg and tried to stab it, but when I lunged, I passed through it like smoke, and then it whispered from behind me, "You belong here now." Only one thing came to mind. Fire. Again. I remembered what the old caretaker said about the ballet tree, how it anchored the house to this plane, how it grew from the bones of the first sacrifice buried under it. If I couldn't break the house from within, maybe I could rip it out from the roots. I dragged a bottle of kerosene from the shed, and poured it around the base of the belette. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped the match. The tree groaned, screamed as it caught fire. The flames spread faster than they should have, almost like the tree wanted to burn. The roots curled and cracked, shrieking like wounded animals. The house itself began to tremble, the walls warping inward, like it was collapsing on itself. Inside, I heard it. Hundreds of voices, begging, screaming, crying my name, some in my own voice. I ran, out through the front door, finally open, down the cracked driveway, past the iron gate that had rusted into dust. The sky above shimmered like it was breaking, and the house behind me folded in on itself. With one final boom, every window exploded outward in a storm of black glass. The bowlight tree cracked down the middle, split like it had been cleaved by lightning. And then it was gone. Nothing but a black scorch mark where it had stood. I collapsed on the street, coughing, heart screaming in my chest, and then I saw it, just for a second. My reflection in the broken glass beside me, smiling, still, watching. I stayed in a friend's condo in Makati after that. Never told anyone the full story. Who'd believe it? I got rid of every mirror I owned, started sleeping with the lights on, salted every door, prayed for peace. But last night, at exactly 2 a.m., there was a knock at the front door. 3 knocks. Software. Deliberate. I inherited the house in Jaro from my great-aunt Lourdes. Never met her. Never even heard of her until the lawyer called. All he said was, she left the house to the last surviving bloodline. That's you. When I arrived, the neighborhood was silent. Too silent. The house sat behind rusted black gates and a wall overgrown with moss and thorns. The grass hadn't been trimmed in years. Its windows were boarded, paint peeled like sunburnt skin. Every inch of it looked starved. But the strangest thing, the front door was unlocked, and inside, the house was clean. Polished floors, fresh flowers, food on the table, candles flickering like they'd just been lit. As if it had known I was coming, the caretaker arrived that night. Didn't even introduce himself. Just handed me a ring of keys and mumbled, "Don't walk the halls barefoot." Then he left. I didn't unpack, just explored. The house had 3 floors, but the third was sealed, padlocked, nailed shut, windows covered from the inside. Every hallway echoed too much. The air was thick, like breathing through cloth. There was 1 step in the main staircase, 3rd from the bottom, that sounded different, hollow, software. When I pressed my ear to it, I heard breathing, not wind, not the house settling. Breathing. That night, I dreamt of whispering. Dozens of voices, guttural, high-pitched, some childlike, some sounding like they were gargling ash. They called my name over and over from beneath me. I woke up on the floor, not in my room, in the hallway, barefoot. My heel was bleeding. Something sharp had cut me. I limped to the bathroom and flicked on the light, and written on the mirror, in something thick and dark, were the words, "Walang sapatos, mas madaling mahila." No shoes, easier to drag. I started hearing movement. Not rats. Not the usual old house creaks. Something heavier. At exactly 1 a.m. every night, something crawled inside the walls. I tested it. Set alarms. Waited with a flashlight. Every time I'd hear it start in the kitchen, slither through the dining room wall, then up the staircase, pausing, always, at the 3rd step. Then it would whisper, Pasok. Let me in. One night, I couldn't help it. I whispered back, no.
And the house shuddered, as if it was holding its breath. On the 6th night, I woke up to a click. The 3rd floor door was open, wide open. I didn't go up. I couldn't. Every instinct in my body screamed no. Instead, I set up a phone at the base of the stairs, recording video. The next morning, the phone was shattered, but the footage backed up to the cloud. And when I watched it, my spine turned to ice at exactly 3:30 a.m. A figure crawled down from the 3rd floor. Not walked, crawled, like a human spider. Its joints bent the wrong way. Its fingers scraped the railings. Its head twisted to the camera, like it knew it was being watched. And it was humming a lullaby. My mother's lullaby. I packed my bags the next morning. I didn't even grab everything. Just tossed clothes into a duffel, grabbed my documents, and rushed to the front door. It wouldn't open. Not stuck, locked. But the key, the only key, was missing from the ring. I checked every window. Sealed. I went to the back. The gate that was rusted open before was now chained shut, with new, gleaming padlocks I'd never seen. And the caretaker? Gone. Number disconnected. The house had locked me in, and all I could hear was the 3rd floor door creaking open again. That night, I sat in the dining room with every light on, salt at the windows, Bible open, my Lola's rosary wrapped tight around my hand. Still at 2 a.m., the crawl began. Kitchen, dining room wall, up the stairs, 3rd step, pause. I held my breath. Then, wood cracked, right below my chair. I jumped up, shining my flashlight at the floor. The wood shifted, bent upward, like something was pushing from below. I dropped to my knees, heart punching my chest. There, between the floorboards, eyes, bloodshot, too wide, unblinking, watching me. Then, a voice. Madali ka lang pumasok, kasi ikaw ay atin. You're easy to enter, because you are ours. I found a photo album in one of the upstairs rooms, covered in dust, old. Inside were black and white photos of a family. My family, apparently. But the faces were scratched out. All of them. Except one. A boy, maybe 8 years old. Eyes too big, grinning too wide. And the label under the photo read, IKAW. You. That night, I looked in the mirror and saw his face, not behind me, instead of mine. When I touched my cheek, the face in the mirror didn't move. Then it ripped its own skin off, revealing a screaming, eyeless face underneath. I gave in, took a knife, pocket flashlight, hammered a nail cross into my coat pocket, and I climbed the stairs. 3rd floor. Freezing. The air was thick. Each step creaked like it was choking on my weight. At the top was a single hallway. No doors, just walls. Painted the same gray as every other room, until I touched it. The walls were hollow. I smashed through one with the hammer. Behind it, rows of people, dead, preserved somehow, standing in alcoves like statues. Some were just skeletons in suits, others fresh, eyes open, lips moving, whispering, repeating the same phrase. Sa ilalim, below, below, below. Then one of them blinked, looked straight at me. It was me. I couldn't move, not for a full minute. The face staring back at me was mine, but the eyes were hollow, mouth twisted in a scream that never came out. The whispering grew louder. Sa-ilalim, sa-ilalim, sa-ilalim. Beneath, below, beneath. I turned. The floor beneath my feet cracked. A sudden pressure, like the house itself was holding its breath. I stumbled backward, my legs giving way as the walls seemed to close in on me.
The ground shuddered, and the hidden doorway at the far end of the hall, the one I had thought was just part of the wall, opened. Not a door. A hole. A tunnel. I couldn't resist. I stumbled toward it, my body pulling me forward, like it had already made up its mind. Inside, the tunnel stretched downward, deeper than the house should have been able to go. I had no choice but to crawl in.
The tunnel felt endless. I pushed through thick, damp air, scraping my knees and hands against rough stone. The sound of my breath echoed too loudly, filling the space with a steady, suffocating hum. As I descended, the walls closed tighter. The air grew colder, denser, and darker, until I couldn't see my hands in front of my face. My flashlight flickered, barely holding on to its last moments of life. I could hear something down there. Moving, the whispering voices were louder now. They weren't speaking in Filipino anymore. The words were distorted, like 1,000 languages trying to form the same sentence. They were screaming. I couldn't understand them, until the final voice, clear, chilling, right in my ear. "We're leaving. You'll replace us." The tunnel opened into a cavern, dark and enormous, far bigger than anything the house should have held. There, in the center of the room, lay a pit, so deep, so dark, I couldn't see the bottom. At the edge of the pit were bones, so many bones, piled high, human remains, some still wearing the remnants of clothing, others twisted, and the smell, decay, sweat, blood. I stepped closer, something pulling me forward against my will. I reached down to touch the bone at my feet, but as I did, a cold hand grabbed my wrist. I whipped around. Standing in the shadows was the figure, the one from the photo. The boy. He was no longer grinning. His eyes were wide, filled with empty, endless voids. "I'm not the first," he whispered, barely audible. I tried to pull away, but my legs refused to move. I was trapped, frozen. His smile returned, distorted, and with it came the others. Dozens of them, crawling out from the shadows, their faces too pale, their bodies too still. But their eyes were alive. They weren't ghosts, not spirits. They were something worse, a creation of this place, built from the souls that had been consumed by it, and they had never left. The house, no, the cavern, began to shift. The walls rumbled, and from deep within the earth came a sound I'll never forget. A deep, reverberating growl that rattled my chest. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the people. It was something older. Something that had always been here. Buried beneath the soil, beneath the walls, beneath the bones. It began to rise. I tried to scream. I tried to run, but my body wouldn't obey. My limbs felt heavy, like they were being pulled by invisible strings. And the boy, no longer smiling, reached out to me. His hand wrapped around my throat, but there was no pain, just cold. "You belong to it now," he whispered. And in that moment, I understood. The house didn't want me to leave. It had been waiting for someone to replace the souls it had already consumed. I was the last sacrifice. I woke up in my bed. The house was still, too still. The air wasn't thick anymore. The walls weren't breathing. I sat up, breathing hard, my heart racing. But nothing was wrong, until I looked at the mirror. My face was gone. Not a reflection. Nothing. Just black. Hollow eyes staring back at me. And behind me, in the dim light, I saw them. The faces. The ones I'd met in the cavern. Crawling out of the walls, their mouths stretched wide as they whispered, "It's time for you to take the place of the next." And the house watched. It started with a letter. I hadn't seen my cousin in years, Joey. He'd been living up in the mountains of Bongay, far from everything and everyone. He sent me a message once, telling me he had found something, but he didn't explain. Then the letter came, a handwritten invitation to visit him at his house. Kalag House, he called it. It's perfect for the kind of peace you've been looking for, he wrote. You need to see it to understand. I didn't know what it meant, but it was an invitation I couldn't refuse. I was at a crossroads in my life, a broken relationship, a dead-end job. I needed something, anything, to clear my mind. So, I packed my bags, grabbed my camera, and made the long trek to Bongay. The ride up was more terrifying than I imagined. The road was steep, winding, and the fog was thick. It seemed like the mountain itself was swallowing the vehicle, pulling us deeper into its belly. By the time I arrived, the sun was already setting, and the house stood like a shadow among the trees. Kalag House, a dilapidated mansion perched on the side of the mountain, half hidden by the thick mist. From a distance, it looked abandoned, its windows dark and its roof sagging like it was about to cave in. But as I approached, the lights flickered on. Joey was standing at the door, waiting. Joey looked different. His eyes were too wide, too hungry in a way I couldn't explain. He gave me a tight smile and led me inside, apologizing for the rough appearance of the house. The mountain is unforgiving, he said, but you'll get used to it. The house was more than just a mansion. It was a labyrinth of long corridors, winding staircases, and rooms that seemed to have no purpose. Everything was covered in dust, like it had been untouched for years. And yet, the strange thing was, there was no smell of rot or decay. It was as though time had stopped. When I asked Joey about it, he simply said, "The house is older than it looks, much older." That's when I noticed the oddest thing. Despite the house being abandoned for who knows how long, every door was closed, and every window was locked from the inside. It didn't make sense. Someone, or something, was still living there, watching. I tried to settle in. Joey gave me the guest room, an old-fashioned thing with a 4-poster bed. The moment I lay down, I could feel it. The weight of the air, heavy, oppressive, the kind of silence that makes you feel like you're not alone. Around midnight, I heard the first strange sound, a soft tapping, like fingers drumming on the floor. I sat up, listening, but when I turned on the light, there was nothing. No one, just the shadows creeping along the walls. I tried to sleep, but the tapping came again, closer this time. And then I heard something else, a whisper, my name, barely audible. Luna. I froze. Only Joey knew my full name. I got up and went down the hallway, my heart thumping in my chest. The house was silent now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The next day, Joey didn't seem himself. His eyes were more sunken, his smile more strained. He acted like he hadn't slept. We sat down for breakfast, and I asked him what the house was like when he first moved in. His response was unsettling. When I moved here, he said, I didn't know the house had a habit. It has a way of making you stay, even if you don't want to. I didn't understand what he meant at the time, but I decided to ask about the rooms. There were several locked ones, which piqued my curiosity. Joey explained that certain rooms were off limits, and not just for guests.
One of those rooms, he said, was where the whispering came from. But when I asked to see it, Joey got uncomfortable. "You don't want to see it," he said. "It's better you don't." I didn't push it, but something told me I was about to find out more than I should have. That night, the tapping started again. Faster, more urgent. I grabbed my camera and went down the stairs, following the sound until it led me to the end of a narrow hall. There, at the farthest corner of the house, was a door, half hidden behind an old rug. I had to know what was behind it. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a small room, covered in cobwebs and dust. In the center was a small wooden table, and around it, chalk markings on the floor, shapes and symbols I couldn't understand. And in the corner, a mirror, old and cracked, covered with thick dust. And then I saw it, a face, a faint image, barely visible in the cracked surface of the mirror. It was a man's face, but it wasn't Joey's. It looked like it had been staring at me for ages. I stepped closer, drawn to it. But then I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. The moment I felt the cold hand on my shoulder, I spun around, heart pounding, ready to scream. But I didn't. There was nothing there. No one. Just the air, heavy and thick, suffocating in its stillness. But as I turned back to the mirror, the face was clearer. The features sharpened. It was no longer a faint image, barely visible. Now, it was solid. A man, tall, dark-haired, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce straight through me. I stumbled backward, my breath catching in my throat. The whisper came again, clearer this time, as though the man's voice was coming from the mirror itself. "Luna, don't leave me here." I couldn't understand it. Why my name? Why did it call me? I reached out to touch the glass, my hand trembling. And then, it happened. That night, the tapping started again. Faster, more urgent. I grabbed my camera and went down the stairs, following the sound until it led me to the end of a narrow hall. There, at the farthest corner of the house, was a door, half hidden behind an old rug. I had to know what was behind it. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a small room, covered in cobwebs and dust. In the center was a small wooden table, and around it, chalk markings on the floor, shapes and symbols I couldn't understand. And in the corner, a mirror, old and cracked, covered with thick dust. And then I saw it, a face, a faint image, barely visible in the cracked surface of the mirror. It was a man's face, but it wasn't Joey's. It looked like it had been staring at me for ages. I stepped closer, drawn to it. The man's reflection, no, his face, smiled, a twisted, unnatural grin. His eyes flashed with something ancient, something malicious. I jerked my hand back in fear, but the smile remained. His lips didn't move, but I felt him speak. "You shouldn't have come. Now you'll stay. You'll stay forever, just like the others." The chill in the room grew unbearable. I ran, not looking back, not caring that I was breaking every rule Joey had set. I bolted upstairs, my heart racing as I reached the hallway. The house was silent again, but I could feel something following me, watching me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The mirror's face haunted me, and the whispers, always the whispers, never stopped. The next morning, Joey was gone. I searched the entire house, calling for him, but there was no response. It was as if the mountain itself had swallowed him whole. I found his room locked, the door sealed shut, the lock as though it had never been touched. But there, outside the door, was an envelope, one addressed to me in Joey's handwriting. I ripped it open. "Luna, I'm sorry. The house has claimed me. You've seen it, haven't you? The thing in the mirror. It's alive and it won't let me leave. It wants you now. You have to destroy it before it's too late. Don't trust the house. Don't trust the whispers. If you're reading this, it's already too late for me. But there's still time for you." The last line of the letter was written in a shaky, panicked hand. "The mirror is the key. Break it." I ran to the small room, the one where I had seen the mirror, my mind clouded with fear. My hands were shaking as I approached the mirror again, but the reflection wasn't what I expected. It was Joey, standing there. His face was pale, his eyes sunken, but it was definitely him. His lips didn't move, but I heard his voice in my head, clear and cold. "You should have left when you had the chance, Luna." I reached for the hammer I had found earlier in the house and raised it high. The whispers in my ears became deafening. "You can't destroy what you've already become part of." I swung the hammer. The glass shattered with a sound that felt like the earth cracking beneath me. For a split second, everything went black. When my vision cleared, the room had changed. The walls were no longer dilapidated. They were alive, pulsing, breathing, like the house itself was a living, breathing thing. The mirror shards on the floor weren't just pieces of glass. They were eyes, thousands of eyes. Each one blinked, one after another, following my every movement. I stumbled back, trying to breathe, trying to escape, but the house wasn't letting me. I was trapped in its heart. As the last of the mirror shattered, the house groaned. The walls seemed to move closer, the shadows twisting, as though the house itself was tightening its grip on me. I ran, through the halls, down the stairs. The air was thick, each step harder than the last. The door that had once been open now seemed impossible to reach. The walls closed in on me, trapping me in a suffocating embrace. And then, I heard it. Joey's voice. But it wasn't his voice anymore. It was deep, guttural. It rumbled from the walls, from the floors. "Stay with us, Luna. You'll be part of us now. Forever." I screamed, but the house answered. A massive, crushing sound. The floor buckled beneath my feet, and I fell. Down, deeper, until I was standing on a cold, hard surface. The ceiling above me cracked open, revealing nothing but black. And there, staring at me from the shadows, were more faces. Faces of people who had been trapped here before me. Their eyes wide with terror, their mouths open in silent screams. But it wasn't just the faces. The thing that had been waiting for me, waiting for all of us, was rising from the darkness. It was huge. Its body was made of twisted, broken limbs, its skin slick with what I can only describe as the remains of everything the house had consumed. The whispers became screams, deafening, all-encompassing. And as it reached for me, its cold fingers brushing against my skin, I understood. The house didn't just want me. It wanted my soul. There was no way out. The house had won. The mountain had claimed me. I could feel it now. The pull, the weight of the house wrapping around me, pulling me into its depths. Its heart, but then the whispers softened. The thing in the darkness spoke, but not to me. It spoke to the other faces, the ones that had been trapped here long before me. "It's time for the next one." And then, silence. Everything stopped. I don't know how I escaped. I don't know if I truly did. But when I woke up, I was outside the house, standing in the thick fog of the mountain, gasping for air. Kalag Kalag House was gone. No sign of it. Only the sound of the wind. But somewhere, deep inside, I know it's still there, waiting. It began with an opportunity I couldn't resist. I had been a journalist for years, always seeking the next big story, the kind that would change everything. And then, I got a call from a researcher in Manila, a man named Dr. Enriquez. He had discovered something, a tribe, forgotten by time, hidden somewhere deep in the mountains of Samar. No one had seen them for decades. He wanted me to document the expedition. I was intrigued. An undiscovered tribe, an entire culture lost in time. It was the kind of story that could make a career. Dr. Enriquez gave me all the details I needed, the coordinates, the plan, and a warning. Be careful. There are things in those forests, things best left alone. Naturally, I dismissed it as superstition. I'm not the kind of person to be intimidated by warnings. I packed my gear and set off with a small team. There was nothing that could have prepared me for what came next. We arrived at the village at dusk. The locals were wary of outsiders, their eyes too sharp, their silence too thick. They spoke little, their language incomprehensible. A sense of unease settled over the group, but Dr. Enriquez pressed on, determined to find the tribe. The villagers, sensing something different about us, offered us little more than shelter and food. But there was something in their eyes, something old, something fearful. I remember the moment when the old man in the village finally spoke to us. He had been watching us all night. His voice was soft but steady, his words slow and deliberate. You should leave. The mountains are not for outsiders. We laughed it off, thinking it was just local superstition. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The air was thick, oppressive, and every crack in the wood seemed louder than it should have been. That night, I dreamt of eyes watching me, piercing, cold, unblinking. The next morning, we gathered our supplies and made our way into the jungle. Dr. Enriquez was enthusiastic, leading the way, while I kept a wary eye on the surroundings. The jungle was alive with sound, birds, insects, and distant animal calls. But beneath it all, I could feel something else, something quiet, something patient. We trekked for hours, our path tangled with vines and roots. The deeper we went, the thicker the air became. The humidity wrapped around us like a suffocating blanket, and every step felt heavier. We found our first sign of the tribe at midday, a crude carving on the side of a tree. It was an image of a man, but the features were distorted, grotesque. The eyes were hollow, the mouth a gaping hole. The lines around it pulsed with a strange energy, as if the tree itself were alive. Dr. Enriquez took a photo, but as he did, he muttered something under his breath. I couldn't catch it, but it sounded like a chant. "That's it," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "We're close. They're close." By the time the sun was setting, we had reached what appeared to be an abandoned clearing. The trees formed a perfect circle around us, as if they were keeping something in or keeping us out. That's when I heard it. A low, guttural hum, barely audible at first, but then growing louder. It seemed to be coming from the ground, vibrating through my feet. Then, the shadows moved. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light. But as they came closer, I realized that they were people. Tall, thin figures, draped in tattered clothing that seemed to be made of leaves, vines, and animal hides. Their eyes glowed in the dim light, and their skin was pale, like they hadn't seen sunlight in years. I froze, not sure whether to run or to stay. Dr. Enriquez, on the other hand, stepped forward, speaking softly in a language I couldn't understand. The figures didn't respond. They didn't move. They just watched. And then one of them raised a hand. The hand was wrong. Long and twisted, its fingers too thin, too long. It pointed directly at me. "Leave!" The voice wasn't human. It was guttural, like something ancient and forgotten. I felt my blood freeze. The forest around me seemed to hold its breath. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the figures vanished back into the trees, leaving us standing in the clearing.
Dr. Enriquez was still smiling. "They know we're here? This is it. We found them." I didn't share Dr. Enriquez's enthusiasm. Something about the encounter didn't sit right with me. The tribe, or whatever they were, didn't seem human. And that warning, "Leave," still echoed in my mind. We camped in the clearing that night. The atmosphere was thick with unease. The forest around us felt alive, watching, waiting. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing rustling in the trees, whispers in the wind. And then, in the dead of night, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside my tent, hoping it was just one of my team members. But what I saw made my blood run cold. Standing at the edge of the clearing was a figure, its pale face illuminated by the moonlight. It was one of the tribe members, but this time, it was different. Its face was distorted. The eyes were wide open, but they were black, like the abyss itself. Its mouth hung open, as though it was about to scream, but no sound came out. The figure stepped forward, its long fingers reaching out. I ran back to the tent, my heart pounding in my chest. But when I turned, the figure was gone. The next morning, I tried to convince Dr. Enriquez to turn back, but he wouldn't listen. "We're so close," he said. "You're just scared. The tribe wants us to understand. They're not hostile. They want to teach us their ways." But I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't meant to learn anything from them. The forest was alive with the tribe's presence, and I could feel it in every step I took. That afternoon, we continued deeper into the jungle, our path now obscured by dense vines and thick roots. The forest was pressing in on us, the trees bending closer, like they were trying to trap us. And then we found it. A clearing, larger than the first, with an ancient stone structure in the center. The stones were covered in moss, but the carvings on them were unmistakable. The faces, the same faces from the carvings we had seen earlier. Twisted, distorted. The eyes were deep pits, their mouths open in eternal screams. Dr. Enriquez stepped forward, his eyes wide with excitement. But as he did, the ground beneath us trembled. The trees shook. The air grew cold. And then I heard it again. The hum. It was coming from the ground, from beneath the stones. Something was rising. Something alive. I grabbed Dr. Enriquez's arm, pulling him back, but it was too late. From the earth, the figures began to emerge. Tall, thin, their faces even more monstrous than before. And they weren't alone. There was something else, something behind them. It was massive, a hulking shape, rising from the earth. And that's when I realized the tribe wasn't just a group of people.
They were guardians. Guardians of something ancient. And now, they were coming for us. The air was suffocating, thick with the smell of damp earth and ancient decay. The tribe members, their long limbs and distorted faces rising from the ground, surrounded us. They moved with an eerie grace, their eyes black voids, their expressions void of any warmth. Their silence was oppressive, like the forest itself had gone still, holding its breath. I tried to step back, but Dr. Enriquez was mesmerized, moving forward as though he were under some kind of spell. This is it, he whispered, his eyes wide with a manic excitement. This is the revelation of a lifetime. But I couldn't share his enthusiasm. Something felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. As the figures stepped closer, I noticed the ground beneath them moving. It wasn't just the earth they were rising from. It was as if they were emerging from the very bones of the land itself. The stone structure in the center of the clearing was no ordinary ruin. It was a gateway, a portal, a gateway to something far worse. You should not be here. The voice came from behind me, deep, guttural, and ancient. It echoed through my mind, sending a shiver down my spine. I spun around, and there, standing at the entrance of the clearing, was an older figure, taller than the rest of the tribe, with a face even more distorted. His eyes were not black, but pure white, pools of nothing. His mouth hung open in an eternal scream. He was their leader, the one they had been waiting for. The others stepped aside as he walked toward us. His every movement was deliberate, slow, like the earth itself was reluctant to move him. You were never meant to find this place. Dr. Enriquez, oblivious to the warning, stepped closer to the leader. I can learn everything here. This is an undiscovered culture, a lost civilization. I need to understand their knowledge. The leader's white eyes fixed on him, unblinking, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something. Anger, perhaps, but it passed quickly. You cannot understand what you were never meant to. And then it happened. The ground rumbled. The air grew colder, thick with a sense of doom that I couldn't explain. The trees around us began to shake violently, and the stone structure in the center of the clearing began to glow. The ancient carvings etched into its surface began to writhe as if alive. The hum, that low, vibrating noise, grew louder, more deafening. And then, a dark shape began to rise from the stone. At first, it was just a shadow, a presence, an idea. But then it became something more, something real. It was massive, taller than the stone structure itself, its body writhing with what looked like tendrils of black smoke. Its eyes were not eyes at all, just dark voids, endless and suffocating. It was a creature born of nightmares, an ancient force of nature that had lain dormant for centuries, waiting to be awakened. I could feel it in my bones, its hunger, its rage. I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, watching in horror as the creature emerged fully from the stone. Its limbs twisted unnaturally, like they were formed from shadows, and its mouth opened in a monstrous roar. "We warned you." The leader's voice echoed, but it didn't come from his mouth. It came from the creature itself, from the darkness that now surrounded us. Dr. Enriquez looked as though he were in a trance. His eyes were wide with wonder, his mouth open as though he had just uncovered the greatest secret of the universe. This is, his voice faltered. This is the god of the tribe. But it wasn't a god. It was something older, something far more malevolent. And as the creature reached out with its long, shadowy limbs, I realized that Dr. Enriquez had made the greatest mistake of his life. He had awoken it. In that moment, I felt the weight of everything I had been warned about. The tribe hadn't just been guarding their culture or their land. They had been guarding this. The creature, the thing that had risen from the earth, was their true master, their ruler. It was the source of their power and their curse. The tribe wasn't just a forgotten people. They were the keepers, and now they had unleashed it. I grabbed Dr. Enriquez's arm, pulling him back. "We have to leave. Now you don't understand what you've done." But he didn't respond. He just kept staring at the creature, his face blank, as though he were being consumed by it. The tribe members surrounded him, chanting in a language I couldn't understand, their voices rising in a chorus that filled the air with a suffocating pressure. I pulled harder, but it was no use. His body was stiff, his eyes glazed over, like he was already under the creature's control. The leader, the tall, wide-eyed figure, stepped toward me, his face twisted with an emotion I couldn't place. Anger, disdain. "You have no place here. You were never meant to see what you have seen." And that's when it hit me. The tribe hadn't been waiting for Dr. Enriquez to find them. They had been waiting for me.
The creature's presence was overwhelming now, the darkness choking the life out of the forest. The trees groaned under its weight. The sky above turned a sickly red, and the ground beneath our feet seemed to twist and writhe like a living thing. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I didn't know if Dr. Enriquez was still alive. I didn't know if anyone was. I ran, pushing past the tribe members who didn't move to stop me. They just watched, their hollow eyes following my every step. The jungle was disorienting, the dense undergrowth making every step feel like I was being pulled backward. The sounds of the creature, the hum, the growl, were growing louder, closer. I reached the edge of the clearing and stumbled out of the forest, my breath ragged in my chest. I didn't stop running until I found the village again. The villagers didn't say a word. They didn't ask where I had been or why I was covered in dirt and blood. They just stared at me, their eyes empty, their faces unreadable. I never saw Dr. Enriquez again, and I couldn't tell anyone what had happened. The jungle had claimed him. It had claimed all of us. And now there are whispers. Whispers about the tribe, about the creature that sleeps beneath the earth, waiting for the next foolish soul to uncover its secret. I left Samar behind, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear it. That hum. And I know it's still waiting for me. It all began when I found the ad. I was searching for a new place to live, somewhere far from the noise of the city, somewhere quiet, somewhere peaceful. A friend had recommended I try the mountain provinces, and so I found myself scrolling through online listings late one night. That's when I saw it. The perfect house, or so I thought. The ad read, "Secluded house for rent. Quiet, peaceful location, surrounded by nature. Beautiful mountain views, very private. Only serious inquiries, please." I was immediately intrigued. It sounded too good to be true, and the photos that came with the ad showed a house that was older, but still charming, nestled at the foot of a forested mountain. The listing had no price, just an email address and a contact number.
I sent an inquiry, and the response came almost immediately. A man named Manuel responded, his message brief and to the point. Come and see it. The house is available, but I must warn you, it's not for everyone. It's a place for those who seek peace, not those who wish to run away from something. His words struck me as odd, but I brushed it off. It was just a strange man renting out an old house. People say weird things all the time. The next weekend, I packed my things and drove to Bongay. I had no idea what I was walking into.
The drive was long, the winding mountain roads twisting more as I ascended higher. The fog rolled in thick around me, and the trees seemed to grow denser with each passing kilometer. It was beautiful, but also unsettling. The kind of place where you could lose yourself, if not in the fog, then in the loneliness. As I reached the village, I could feel something in the air, a heaviness, like the mountain was watching me. I tried to shake it off as I made my way to the address. The locals didn't seem to take much notice of me as I passed, but their eyes followed me just a little too long. Finally, I arrived. The house stood at the edge of the world, perched on a cliffside, with a panoramic view of the valley below. It was old, far older than I had expected. The wood was worn and the paint was chipped, but the structure was still intact. It had an eerie beauty, like a relic from a forgotten time. Manuel greeted me at the door. He was tall, with gaunt features and eyes that seemed to hold more sorrow than a man should. He had a quiet demeanor, but there was something unsettling about him, something that tugged at the edge of my instincts. I'll show you around, he said, stepping aside to let me enter. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. The air was thick, heavy with history. The house felt lived in, but not by anyone I could see. The walls whispered, the wooden floorboards creaked underfoot, and the silence seemed too loud. Manuel led me through the rooms. The living room was spacious, filled with antique furniture that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. There were framed photographs on the walls, portraits of people I didn't recognize, their faces frozen in time. The kitchen was old-fashioned, with a large stove and cabinets filled with dishes that hadn't been used in decades. As I followed him down the hallway, I noticed something strange. There were no windows in the hallway, just doors leading to empty rooms. It felt like the house was trying to swallow itself. At the end of the hall was a door that led to the basement. I don't go down there, Manuel said quietly. But the house is yours now. If you want to stay, just remember it's not for everyone. I was confused, but I didn't press him for answers. Instead, I looked at him and nodded. I'll take it, I said, still unsure why I was feeling so uneasy. He gave a nod and handed me a set of keys. You'll be fine, he said, and with that, he left. I was alone. I spent the rest of the afternoon settling in. I explored the house a little more, trying to shake the strange feeling that lingered in the back of my mind. The air was colder than I expected, especially in the evening. I lit the fireplace and tried to distract myself with a book, but something in the house made it hard to concentrate. It wasn't just the creaking floorboards, the groaning walls. It was something more alive. The first sign that something was wrong came that night. Around midnight, I heard footsteps from above. I froze, thinking it was just the house settling. But then I heard the unmistakable sound of someone walking upstairs. Heavy, slow steps.
I grabbed the flashlight beside my bed and crept into the hallway. There was no one there. The house was empty. Still, the footsteps continued. Thud, thud, thud. I followed the sound, my heart racing, until I reached the stairs leading to the attic. The door to the attic was cracked open, and from the darkness above, I could feel eyes on me. The footsteps stopped. I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, to turn around and never come back. But I had to know what was happening. I stepped into the attic. The room was filled with dust, old furniture, and cobwebs. But in the center of the room, standing against the far wall, was a mirror, an antique full-length mirror. Its glass was cracked, the frame warped, and something about it drew me in, as if it were calling me. I moved closer, my reflection growing distorted in the broken glass. But then, in the reflection, I saw something else, someone standing behind me. I spun around. No one was there. But in the reflection, the figure was still standing there. An old man, his face pale, his eyes dark with sorrow, and he was reaching out to me. I slammed the door shut and backed away. My heart was pounding. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was alive, feeding off something. The air grew colder, and I could almost feel the whispers crawling under my skin. The next day, I went into town to speak to some of the locals. I needed answers. I couldn't ignore the strange things happening in the house. An old woman at the market told me the story. The house, she said, in a voice barely above a whisper, was built by a man named Matteo. He was a recluse, never spoke to anyone. But when his wife died, he changed. He locked himself in that house, never leaving. People say he was trying to bring her back, trying to defy death itself, but he failed. He paid for it. The house is cursed. It's built on the edge of the world, where the dead and the living meet. Her words sent a chill through me. That night, the house felt different. The cold was more intense, and the whispers were louder. There was no escape. No matter where I went in the house, it followed me. The footsteps, the whispers, the cold, and then I heard it again. The voice. Leave. It was faint, but it was there, like the wind itself had spoken. I ran to the door, but the house wouldn't let me leave. The door wouldn't budge. The windows were sealed shut, as though the house had become a prison. I was trapped. I spent the next few hours in a frenzy, trying to escape, but it was no use. The house was alive, and it wouldn't let me go. That's when I found the old journal, hidden under the floorboards in the attic. It was Matteo's. The final entry was scrawled in a shaky hand. I have failed. The house is cursed. My wife is not here, but something is. It whispers in the dark. It walks through the halls. It is not her. It is the thing that took her. I cannot escape. The house will never let me leave. As I read the final words, I heard the footsteps again. I turned to face the mirror. This time, there was no reflection of me.